ballroom glittered with golden chandeliers, laughter echoing through marble walls as businessmen and investors clinked champagne glasses. It was a night of deals, power, and signatures that could shift empires. At the center of it all sat Alexander Ward, a man whose name alone carried the weight of billions. His sharp jawline, tailored black suit, and piercing blue eyes made him look untouchable, like a man carved out of steel. Yet beneath that commanding exterior, he carried a loneliness he'd never admit aloud. The contract lay before him. Just one stroke of his pen, and his family's century-old empire would merge with the ruthless conglomerate owned by Victor Keeney, a smiling vulture dressed in designer silk. Everyone around him was waiting, holding their breath. The cameras were ready. The press would call it the deal of the century. But as Alexander's fingers brushed the pen, a quiet voice pierced through the noise. "Don't sign that." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a whisper, soft, almost fragile. He looked up, startled, and saw her, the waitress. She stood just a few feet away, balancing a silver tray of wine glasses, her chestnut hair tucked neatly under her cap. She had kind brown eyes that seemed too honest for this room of polished liars. And yet somehow, in a hall full of executives, journalists, and sharks in expensive suits, her whisper cut sharper than any shout. Before I dive deeper into this breathtaking story, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to Exposed Tales, where powerful stories like this one come alive. Your support helps us share more tales that inspire, shock, and move hearts across the world. Alexander froze, his pen hovering over the line where his signature would seal his fate. His eyes narrowed at the young woman. "What did you just say?" The room grew tense. Victor Kane's smile faltered. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Waiters weren't supposed to speak, especially not to billionaires on the brink of history making deals. The waitress swallowed hard but held his gaze. "Don't sign that paper. It's a trap." Gasps echoed around them. The manager rushed forward, whispering apologies to Victor and trying to drag the waitress away. But something in Alexander's chest shifted, an instinct he hadn't felt in years. He raised his hand, stopping them. "No," he said firmly, his voice cutting across the ballroom. "Let her speak." The crowd grew silent, eyes flickering between the billionaire and the trembling waitress. Her hands shook as she set down the tray, but her voice, though quiet, didn't waver. "My brother used to work for Mr. Kane," she said, her words trembling with urgency. "He found documents, proof that Kane strips companies of their workers, shuts down factories, and sells off land while people lose everything. My brother tried to expose it. 2 weeks later, he disappeared." Her voice cracked on the last word. She blinked rapidly, forcing herself not to cry. Alexander's jaw tightened. He glanced at Kane, whose smile had frozen into something venomous. "That's a dangerous accusation," Kane sneered, adjusting his cufflinks. "Are you really going to believe the ramblings of a waitress?" But Alexander didn't reply. His mind raced. Something about her tone, raw, desperate, true, struck deeper than Kane's rehearsed charm ever had. He thought about the workers in his factories, about the people who relied on his company. He thought about his late father, who had built their empire on integrity, not exploitation. The pen felt like a weapon in his hand now. And suddenly, Alexander made a choice that would change everything. He dropped it. The metal clattered against the marble table, echoing like thunder in the stunned silence. "I won't sign," he said. The room erupted. Reporters scrambled. Investors muttered angrily. Kane's face darkened, his mask slipping. "You'll regret this, Ward," he spat, leaning forward. "You're throwing away billions because of a servant's fairy tale." Alexander stood slowly, his tall frame towering over Kane. His voice was calm but carried a power that silenced everyone. "No deal is worth selling my soul, and no truth is too small to ignore, especially when spoken by someone brave enough to risk everything to say it." The waitress stared at him, stunned, as if she couldn't believe he'd listened. In the chaos that followed, security escorted Kane out. The deal collapsed. Stock markets buzzed with rumors. Headlines screamed about the billionaire who walked away. But what the world didn't know yet was that Alexander had secretly ordered his own investigation. And the waitress, her name was Emily, was right. Kane's empire was built on fraud, destruction, and corruption. Weeks later, the truth exploded across the media, and Kane's empire crumbled under the weight of his crimes. But what shocked everyone most wasn't the downfall of Kane. It was what Alexander did next. Instead of returning to his skyscraper office and endless board meetings, he sought out Emily. He found her still working at the restaurant, still carrying trays with quiet dignity. She gasped when she saw him standing there in his tailored suit, waiting at a simple corner table. "You risked everything to warn me," he told her softly. "People like you deserve to be heard. I want you to join my foundation. Help me protect the workers, the families, people like your brother, who were silenced by men like Cain." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't from fear. They were from hope. And from that day on, the billionaire who almost sold his soul became the man who fought for others. With Emily by his side, Alexander launched programs to protect workers' rights, funded investigations to expose corruption, and rebuilt his empire on something rarer than wealth: trust. His bold decision rippled across the world, reminding everyone that true power doesn't come from contracts, signatures, or billions in the bank. It comes from listening to the quietest voice in the loudest room and having the courage to act on it. Before we close this powerful story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Exposed Tales. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that even a whisper can change everything. Because sometimes, the smallest voice carries the greatest truth.